So like I mentioned at the beginning, this section is heavily focused on one-to-one types of strategies that you might be using with kids. Remember, this is your Batman utility tool belt of strategies. Heavy disclaimer, not all strategies work for all participants in all settings, right? Seriously. And not all are a really good choice to try, and we'll kind of go through some of that as we move forward here. So remember, you hear me very deliberately saying kids with autism or participants with autism, teens with autism. I don't say autistic kids or the autistic people we work with. And the reason I like to use person-first language is because I think it puts the person at the front of what we're talking about. So remember, like I said before, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. Every single person is incredibly individual. There's going to be all kinds of variation in terms of their learning style, the way they like you to interact with them, all that kind of stuff. So really, 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 every time you're in a new coaching situation, you almost want to think, whoop, blank slate, right? Now I got to get to know this person in front of me. There's my disclaimer. I find that it is very helpful to work in team environments whenever possible. All of our CAN programs are team delivered programs. I really like that because I think that lets everyone sort of bring their own strengths to the table. If I'm directly involved in a situation with a participant and someone else saw it, they can give me some feedback on things they may have noticed that I didn't notice because I was right in the moment. So you really want to work together to figure out the strategy that's going to be the right fit for each person that you're participating. And remember to collaborate with parents. So you ask those simple 3 questions at the beginning of a program. It'll save you so much grief just knowing some important things up front, like tell me some things your kid likes, right? So now I know, okay, this kid is really into the Canucks, or he's really into trains, or he's really into the transit system, or whatever. When I'm chatting with him, we're going to talk in a second about the importance of building rapport. Now I know how I can build rapport with this kid because I asked that question, right? Another question I would ask is, tell me some things to avoid when working with this participant. So some parents, there are very clear trigger words for some kids that some parents will be able to tell you right away. You can avoid those and you can ask, okay, so what's the alternative? Like, how would you say that to the kid? Or how would you get him to do this if I'm not going to say this or whatever? Yeah, and then also, what's most important to you? How do you want to be involved in this? Asking those questions up front really, really takes you such a long way. Any support strategies specifically that I should be using with your kid, 3 or 4 simple questions really can save you a lot of time. So when we're doing staff training, I just throw this out there because I think people think about one-on-one skills, and those are really important. It's great to kind of bring people in and train them with a bunch of strategies for how to support kids with autism. But if you don't have these things, it doesn't matter how much information I give you. So when we hire for our programs, we are number 1 looking for enthusiasm and energy. You can walk into a program, and if the staff are not bringing energy to that program, it's going to flop no matter what. No matter how good your curriculum is, no matter how much they know, no matter who the kids are, if your staff is not an energetic, committed group of people, it's not going to work. I love safety awareness. You can ask anyone on my team. It's kind of a huge focus for me. In a rec setting, that means things like knowing where the exit doors are in the gym, knowing and asking the questions up front about which kids are aware of deep water, simple things like that. Willingness to accept feedback is so important in this field because kids with autism are all so different. So if you have someone coming in and they say, oh, well, I've worked with this kid in this school for 3 years and I know a lot about autism. Okay, that's awesome. Like, that's a great experience. But just realize that if you're not willing to shift and adapt the way that you interact with some of our other participants, it's not going to work. So if someone gives you feedback and you're extremely resistant to change, you're probably not a good fit for the team. Eager to learn, hugely important because there's new things to learn every day. Kids are going to come in, they're going to show you different things. Be flexible. So if people, you might need to shift around responsibilities right on the spur of the moment based on what's happening. Be a good team player. So skills and knowledge are important, but I think the parents in the room know this. Some people just have it. And when they talk about the people who have it, a lot of the time they're talking about these characteristics. They're the people who are just there in the moment with the kid, able to read the kid because they're so committed and energized with what they're doing. So make sure you have all that. Okay, I'd like to next talk about my common sense strategies. So sometimes there has been a couple of occasions where I'm sort of like the last person on the totem pole that gets called if a kid is having problems. So generally we try to solve it within the facility setting with the coaches and the support workers, get together, work it out, how can we fix this, whatever. If it's still not working, the program coordinator gets a call. Okay, we're having this issue, can you come in and look at the program? If it's still not working, then I get the call and I come in and I'm sort of providing consultation to the program in terms of how can we fix this and make it successful for this participant. So what's interesting to me is that sometimes when I get those calls, the staff will say, oh my gosh, like we tried a social story, we made a contingency map, we tried a token board, we're using the visual schedule, like 6 different things that they've tried. And then I say, okay, let's go back and do the common sense checklist and make sure all of these things are in place. Because if any of these things are missing, it doesn't matter what fancy visual support you're going to try to use with a kid. You have to have these things in place as a foundation. So is there good rapport between the instructor and the participant? Number 1, I think it's hard sometimes in rec settings where swimming is classic. You have 30 minutes for a swimming lesson, right? So swimming instructors, amazing people, are often very focused on, oh my God, I only have 30 minutes, so I gotta teach all these skills, I gotta teach them as fast as I can, I gotta get as many skills in as I can. And sometimes they haven't stopped to take that time to get to know the child, to get to know how they communicate, to get to know what they like. Those things are going to allow you to provide much more effective instruction throughout all of your consecutive lessons. So in our swim program, if the kid comes in and all they do the first lesson is play in the water, I'm happy. I'm fine with that, right? If that coach has never met that kid before, that is time well spent. Because now they know how that kid communicates, how they need to communicate with the kid. They've probably found some things that are really reinforcing to that kid. So for the rest of the lessons, when I'm going to try to get that kid to do a back float, I can say, well, first back float, and then we'll do the slide, because I know you love that slide, right? And I know what kind of language is going to work and all that kind of thing. So rapport. The kid has to think you're interesting and fun before they listen to you. Think about in your own lives growing up, probably in high school-ish, and even as a kid, who did you work hardest for? You worked hardest for the teachers that you liked, the coaches that you respected, right? Build that respect and like with the kids that you're working with. If they don't have that, they're not going to do much for you no matter what you throw at them. Okay, so take the time to just have some fun. I know it's hard. It's hard to have fun sometimes, but boy, is it ever worth it to invest that time in the relationship at the beginning? Make sure your activities are fun. That's kind of why I like working at CAN, because it's a rec program, so it's generally pretty fun. But maybe the kids are disengaged with a drill, not because you didn't draw it on the whiteboard properly, but because the drill is just really, really boring, right? How can we inject more fun into this? So if we're doing a stick handling drill in hockey, and it's like same old, the kids have done it 20 times, it's just like around the pylons or whatever. Well, one day, let's do it with soccer balls. Let's do it with rubber chickens. Let's do it with, something that's a bit more interesting and fun, right? So I can re-engage the kids, get them re-interested in what we're doing. Alternating easy and hard activities. We're going to talk later about when and why you might use a visual schedule. If you create a visual schedule, it allows the instructor to make sure that they are doing this, right? Think about anything in life. If you have hard thing to do, hard thing to do, hard thing to do, finally something easy, it's really hard to get through those 3 hard things, right? It's a little bit easier in your day if you can sort of alternate. Okay, first I got to finish this report, then I'm going to check my email. That's pretty easy, okay? First, then I'm going to do this. Okay, then I'm going to take a break and go get a coffee. Then I'm going to finish this, So easier, harder, easier, harder, easier, harder, okay? If it's too much boring and hard, they're not going to get through them. Be sure to use a lot of praise. I actually find that people who work in community rec are pretty good at this. It's sort of like who they are. The only thing I would add to that is sometimes when our participants are achieving skills, it's in smaller steps than what you might see in other programs. So the only thing I would add is make sure your staff are taught to recognize those little steps and really celebrate those little steps, right? So if the kid is really resistant in skating and doesn't want to put those skates on, and but that first day when they allow you to actually put the boot on their foot, woo, dancing bears, right? Like, yay, yeah, this is so great. I can't wait to see you skate. You're going to be just like the Canucks one day if you keep practicing, So that little step might not be something that's celebrated in a typical program, but in our program is a hugely big deal for that kid. So watch for the little steps and make sure you're praising those as well. Learn to read the signs. So this is again about getting to know your individual participants. But I always say to our staff, gosh, I would really rather that you cut it off and took a break than we were left to mop up the mess after, right? There's no reason for us to be pushing kids past the point in our programs, right? We want to get them to try. We want to get them to participate to the greatest extent that they possibly can. But if they're at a point where it's like, you know what? That was good. And some of that is related to reading the small steps. So that was good for them today. They got way further than they've ever gotten before. Let's celebrate that, take a little break, continue to develop rapport, and end on a good note, right? Much better idea than push way too hard, and the kid's like, oh, I hate this, I don't want to come back, right? Make sure they always want to come back. Another simple one I would say is communicating at the child's level. This is a very nice photo because the staff member has gotten right down to the level of the participant there. Just keep in mind, this is a common sense strategy. This is really important with typically developing kids, right? It makes them feel much more comfortable when you come to them at their level. Imagine you're a kid who has a communication delay and someone comes at you with all the best intentions, but they're moving really, really quick and they're really loud and really energetic. It's kind of, whoa, right? So slowly at their level, imagine you're in a foreign country, you don't speak the language and someone comes at you like this. It's really scary. So even more so, I would say, for some of our kids, this is very important.